What if you showed up to your very first day of work, completely ready, completely excited, and then, within the first 2 hours, you witnessed something so insane, so unbelievably stupid, or so outrageously illegal that you grabbed your bag, walked straight out the door, and never looked back? And you were completely right to do it? Today we have 49 real workers who did exactly that. And some of these stories are so absurd, so jaw-dropping, and so hilariously unhinged that you are going to question whether these companies were even run by actual humans. So if you are already curious, hit that brand new hype button right now, because this video is about to make you feel so much better about whatever is going on at your job. 1. A man walked into Walmart on his very first day. A customer stopped him in the aisle and asked where the pickles were. He simply said he did not know. His manager appeared out of nowhere and immediately wrote him up for it. He stood there staring at the write-up slip. It was his first hour on the job. He had not even found the pickles himself yet. He put the slip down on the nearest shelf and walked straight out the front door. 2. A woman showed up to her first shift at Chick-fil-A full of energy and ready to work. Then her trainer explained that every single customer must be told, "My pleasure," and never, "You're welcome." She tried it once, then twice. By the third time, she felt something inside her shift. She pulled her manager aside and explained it felt spiritually wrong on a personal level. Her manager blinked. She blinked back. She untied her apron, very slowly placed it on the counter, and walked out without saying a single word. Not even my pleasure. 3. A supervisor at a telemarketing company had a very unique monitoring style. On day 1, he walked directly behind every new employee while they made calls. Not beside them, behind them, breathing on their neck the entire time. The guy at desk 3 lasted exactly 4 calls before warm breath hit his left ear mid-sentence. He hung up the phone, stood up slowly, grabbed his jacket off the back of his chair, and walked out without logging off his computer. The supervisor just stood there breathing at an empty seat. 4. A teenager landed a job at a movie theater and thought life was finally coming together. Then his manager handed him a laminated size chart. The small popcorn was labeled tall. The medium was grande. The large was venti. He stared at it for a long time. He turned it over to see if there was a joke on the back. There was not. He asked his manager if this was legal. His manager said yes. He put the card down very gently and went home and never came back. 5. A woman accepted a receptionist job and showed up on day 1 feeling confident. Then, HR slid her a contract across the desk. Her official job title was printed clearly at the top, Director of First Impressions. She looked up, she looked back down. The job description listed answering phones and signing for packages. She asked 3 separate people if this was real. All 3 said yes with completely straight faces. She signed nothing, picked up her bag, and walked back out through the front door she had just made such a great first impression on. 6. A man started his first day at an Amazon warehouse and felt ready to work hard. Then his supervisor explained the bathroom policy. Say he could not simply walk to the bathroom, he had to submit a digital request through the system. Then wait for approval. Then log the exact duration of his visit. He raised his hand and asked what happens if it is an emergency. His supervisor said the system has an emergency option, but it still requires approval. He nodded slowly, picked up his vest, folded it neatly on the conveyor belt, and left the building. 7. A college student got hired at a fancy country club and thought this was her big break. On day 1, her manager pulled her aside for orientation. She was told under no circumstances should she make direct eye contact with any club member. She must always look at their left shoulder when speaking to them. She practiced it once in the mirror of the staff bathroom. It felt insane. She walked back out and told her manager she had a question about the left shoulder rule. Her manager said it was non-negotiable. She grabbed her bag and left at a full walk. 8. A guy joined a marketing agency, excited to finally start his career. He arrived at 7 in the morning as instructed. His manager gathered the whole team in a circle. This was the daily gratitude huddle. everyone had to share one thing they were grateful for out loud. It was his very first day. He did not even know where the bathroom was yet. When it was his turn, every single person stared at him waiting. He said he was grateful for the exit sign, then he pointed at it, then he used it. 9. A woman accepted a position at a dental office and arrived early on her first morning. The office manager welcomed everyone warmly and then called the team into the meeting room. She explained that every single morning meeting begins the same way. On her count, the entire staff claps together in perfect synchronization 3 times. The woman looked left, she looked right. Everyone around her looked completely serious. The clap happened. It was loud, it echoed. She sat completely still with her hands in her lap, gathered her things after the meeting, and never scheduled her second day. 10. A man got hired at a car dealership and showed up on his first morning sharp and ready. Before the lot even opened, his manager rounded up the entire sales team in the parking lot. He announced it was time for the morning chant. Every single salesperson had to repeat together out loud the words, "We are hunters." The man stood in the circle looking around at grown adults chanting in a parking lot at 8 in the morning. He did not join in. He just watched. Then he got in his car and drove home, still in his tie. 11. A 19-year-old landed his first real job at a gym and showed up genuinely excited about starting his fitness career. His manager handed him a printed script before he even put his bag down and explained that he must say it to every single person who walked through the door. The script said, "You look like you have already been working hard today." He read it carefully and then looked up because the very first customer who walked in was eating a bag of chips and had clearly just arrived from a parking lot. He placed the script back on the desk and quit before his first lunch break. 12. A woman started her first day at a staffing agency feeling genuinely hopeful about the opportunity ahead of her. Her manager welcomed her in warmly and sat her down for what she described as a very important cultural policy explanation. After a long pause, her manager looked her directly in the eyes and said that lunch at this company is not a right, but a privilege that must be earned through daily performance. The woman sat completely still processing what she had just heard, and then placed her pen back on the desk and stood up and walked out, still holding her unopened welcome folder. 13. A guy got hired at a grocery store and thought the job of stacking shelves sounded peaceful and straightforward enough for a first position. Then his manager pulled him aside on day 1 and explained the upselling policy in full detail. He was required to aggressively suggest the store brand version of every single product to every single customer, even when that customer was already holding something else and had not asked for any input whatsoever. The first woman he approached was simply trying to buy pasta sauce in peace, and she looked so alarmed by his aggressive suggestion that he alarmed himself and walked to the break room and never returned to the floor. 14. A man accepted a position at a shipping company and arrived on his first morning genuinely prepared to follow every rule they threw at him. His supervisor lined up the new staff and explained the communication policy with great seriousness and total confidence. The only acceptable response to any instruction from any supervisor was the phrase "Roger," "that," and absolutely nothing else would be tolerated under any circumstances. The man absorbed this information and instinctively nodded and said, "Okay," out of pure habit, and his supervisor immediately wrote him up for it before his first task had even been assigned. He picked up his things and walked out without saying another word. 15. A woman started her first shift at a call center and settled into her assigned desk, feeling ready to prove herself on day 1. She then noticed a large screen mounted directly above her station, and her manager explained with great enthusiasm that her typing speed was being monitored in real time on that very screen and was fully visible to the manager from across the entire room at all times. She typed her first sentence and heard a loud sigh from across the room. She typed her second sentence and heard another sigh that was somehow even louder than the first one. By the fourth sigh, she stood up and walked out while the manager sighed again at the empty chair. 16. A college graduate accepted his first job offer at a consulting firm and showed up on day one feeling like his entire career was finally and officially beginning. HR walked him proudly to his assigned desk and explained that seating had been determined by personality test results completed during the hiring process. He had scored in the high energy category, which meant his permanent desk was positioned directly beside the office DJ speaker that played motivational bass remixes at full volume throughout the entire workday. He sat down and opened his onboarding documents and watched the words vibrate on the page from the bass and packed his bag 2 hours later with his ears still ringing loudly. 17. A man started his first day at a corporate office and slipped away mid-morning to find the break room because he desperately needed a cup of coffee to get through his onboarding paperwork. He found the room at the end of the hallway, but there were no chairs inside and no table, and absolutely no food or drinks of any kind allowed in the space. A small speaker in the corner was playing pan flute music on a continuous loop, and a sign on the wall read, "Welcome to your mindfulness pod." A coworker walked past the open door and whispered that the old break room had been permanently converted 3 months ago and was never coming back. Then he grabbed his coat from his desk and left the building. 18. A man showed up to his first day at a restaurant feeling full of energy and completely ready to learn everything about the kitchen from the ground up. His manager gathered the new staff together and announced that before anyone was allowed to touch a single ingredient or piece of equipment, the entire group had to sit down and watch an important company video. The video was 45 minutes long and was entirely dedicated to the restaurant founder's deeply personal vision for mayonnaise, and contained absolutely nothing about food safety or cooking technique or hygiene of any kind. The man watched until minute 11 before standing up and tucking his chair in neatly and walking straight past the mayonnaise display on his way out of the building. 19. When a teenage girl got her very first job at a mall clothing store and arrived on her opening shift buzzing with excitement about finally earning her own money. Her manager pulled her aside before the store opened and delivered what she called a very important customer service tip that all staff were expected to follow without exception. She was told that she must smile at all times during her shift, including when she was speaking on the phone, because customers can apparently hear a smile through the tone of someone's voice even without seeing their face. She practiced smiling while pretending to speak on the phone, and by her third real call, her face was aching so badly that she put the phone down and walked out still smiling from pure muscle memory. 20. A guy landed his first job in the mailroom of a prestigious law firm and thought it was a genuinely solid and respectable way to begin building his professional career from the bottom up. On his very first day, his manager handed him a thick stack of printed emails and instructed him to hand-deliver each one personally to the individual lawyers sitting on the 4th floor of the same building. He held the warm stack of papers and asked his manager directly whether those same lawyers had access to their own email accounts, and his manager confirmed that yes, they did. He then asked whether there was a printer on the 4th floor, and his manager confirmed it was sitting approximately 10 feet from their desks. He placed the stack down and left. 21. A woman accepted a position at a logistics company and arrived on her first day genuinely excited about building a career in a fast-moving industry with real growth potential. During her orientation, her manager sat her down and walked her through her official job responsibilities in careful detail. Her entire role consisted of attending meetings that were specifically about planning other upcoming meetings, and then writing detailed summaries of those summaries, and filing them in a shared folder that nobody ever opened. She asked her manager what the summaries were actually used for, and her manager paused for a very long time before saying they feed into the broader communication strategy. She picked up her bag and left during the lunch break and never fed into anything. 22. And a man accepted a front desk position at a well-known hotel and showed up on his first morning dressed sharply and ready to deliver excellent customer service to every single guest who walked through the lobby doors. During training, his supervisor pulled him aside and explained one of the most important policies of the entire hotel experience. He was required to pretend that he personally recognized every single returning guest who checked in, regardless of whether he had ever seen that person before in his entire life. His very first returning guest walked in and stared at him, waiting to be recognized. And he stared back, trying to look familiar, and the silence lasted so long that he quietly excused himself and never came back. 23. A woman joined a tech company on a Monday morning, feeling genuinely thrilled about finally working somewhere modern and forward-thinking and flexible. By 10 in the morning, she had discovered that the standing desk policy was not simply a suggestion, but was actively enforced throughout the day by a coworker whose official printed job title on his lanyard read Wellness Accountability Partner. He walked the floor every 40 minutes with a clipboard and made notes about who was sitting and who was standing and submitted those notes to HR every single Friday. She watched him complete his first lap around the office and then packed her laptop into her bag and left before he completed his second. 24. A guy started his first shift at a fast food chain and was handed his uniform and his training materials and felt ready to contribute to the team in whatever way was needed most. His manager then pulled him aside to explain a very serious policy regarding the handling of food during busy service periods. His first day hours had already been docked on his timesheet because during the lunch rush, a single French fry had fallen off a customer's tray onto the counter, and he had picked it up and eaten it in one automatic and completely unconscious motion. He had not even realized he had done it until the manager was already pointing at the security camera footage on a tablet. He untied his apron and placed it on the counter. 25. A woman accepted a position at a logistics company and collected her employee handbook on the morning of her very first day, feeling like a prepared and responsible new hire who was taking her onboarding seriously. She sat at her assigned desk and opened the handbook to get familiar with the company, culture, and general policies before her first official meeting. She discovered that 14 full pages of the document were dedicated entirely and exclusively to the correct and approved method of composing and sending an internal email within the organization. 14 pages for an email. She flipped through them slowly to make sure she was not misreading the table of contents, and then closed the handbook and placed it back on the desk and walked out. 26. And a man got hired at a sporting goods store and showed up on his first morning wearing his best trainers and feeling like the job was genuinely made for someone with his level of enthusiasm for athletic products. During his store orientation, his manager explained the mobility policy that all staff were expected to follow at all times while on the shop floor without exception. Employees were required to jog between departments rather than walk in order to model an active and energetic lifestyle for every customer who entered the store. He jogged once between the running shoe section and the yoga mat aisle, and a customer stopped and stared at him, and he stopped jogging immediately and kept walking straight toward the exit without looking back. 27. A teenager got hired at a local pizza place and showed up for his very first shift, excited about the free food and the flexible hours and the general vibe of working somewhere that smelled that good all the time. His manager sat him down before his first customer interaction and handed him a printed customer service guide that outlined the exact language all staff were required to use when describing the menu to anyone who walked in. He was told that under no circumstances should he refer to any pizza simply as a pizza. Every single pizza on the menu must be described to customers as a culinary experience. He practiced it once out loud. It felt deeply wrong in his mouth. He handed the guide back and went home. 28. A woman accepted an HR position at a mid-sized company and arrived on her first morning genuinely looking forward to doing meaningful work that would actually impact the people inside the organization in a positive way. Her manager greeted her warmly and walked her over to her desk and handed her her very first official assignment before she had even logged into her computer or found the bathroom. She was required to create a full PowerPoint presentation explaining to the entire company why the staff should feel genuinely excited about an upcoming change to the employee parking policy. She opened PowerPoint. She stared at the blank first slide for 3 full minutes. She closed the laptop, picked up her bag, and left to go find a job that mattered. 29. A man accepted a warehouse position and arrived on his first morning prepared to work hard and follow instructions and prove himself as a reliable member of the team from day one. His manager gathered the new starters together for the morning briefing and made a very important announcement before anyone had touched a single box or piece of equipment. All personal opinions were strictly prohibited during work hours effective immediately. This included any and all comments about the weather outside. His manager explained that personal opinions drain team energy and create an unproductive atmosphere. A new starter beside him whispered that it looked like rain. The manager turned and stared. The man beside him went pale. He grabbed his vest off the hook and left it on a box by the door. 30. A woman accepted a position at a publishing house and arrived on her first morning carrying her English literature PhD and years of genuine passion for books and language and the written word in all its forms. During her orientation, her manager explained her role as editorial coordinator in full and enthusiastic detail. Her responsibilities consisted entirely of scheduling Zoom calls, not editing, not reading manuscripts, not writing a single word of anything, just finding time slots in other people's calendars and sending meeting links to people who then complained about having too many meetings. She sat at her desk holding her PhD certificate in her bag, underneath her chair, and lasted until noon before standing up and walking out of the building into the fresh air. 31. A guy got hired at a clothing store and showed up on his first day feeling confident about his people skills and his ability to handle a busy retail environment without losing his mind. During his store orientation, his manager explained the customer service policy that every single staff member was required to follow without any deviation or personal judgment whatsoever. Anytime a customer asked where a specific item was located, he was required to personally escort that customer to the exact shelf location of that item, no matter how many other customers were standing waiting for assistance at the same time. Out of 3 customers asked him 3 different questions simultaneously within his first hour, and he had to pick one and walk away from the other 2, and all 3 of them followed him anyway, and he just kept walking straight out the door. 32. A woman accepted a position at a corporate wellness company and arrived on her first morning feeling genuinely passionate about promoting healthy workplace culture and positive employee experiences across the organization. During her onboarding session, her manager introduced what she called the Emotional Transparency Initiative that had been recently rolled out across the entire company. Every single employee was required to document each emotion they experienced throughout the workday in a shared Google Sheet that was fully visible to every member of their team in real time at all times. She opened the spreadsheet and saw that a colleague had logged feeling misunderstood at 9:15 in the morning. She typed confused into her own row, then deleted it, then typed ready to leave, then actually left. 33. A guy accepted a position at a grocery store and arrived on his first morning, ready to work hard and make a solid impression on the management team during what he considered a very important first day. During his orientation, the store manager handed him his uniform and his name badge and explained that every single employee name tag at this particular store was required to include a fun fact about themselves printed underneath their name. He submitted his first fun fact, and his manager rejected it as not fun enough. He submitted a second one, and it was rejected again for the same reason. And he submitted a third and a fourth, and both were rejected before lunch. He was standing in the break room on his 5th attempt when he decided the most fun fact he had was that he no longer worked there. 34. A woman walked into a sales office on her very first morning, carrying her notebook and her ambition and a large coffee, and feeling completely ready to close deals and build a career in a high-energy environment. Her manager called the entire team together for the daily morning meeting, and the woman found a seat and opened her notebook professionally. Her manager then produced a large foam finger from behind the podium and a foghorn from underneath the desk and announced that this was how every single morning meeting at this company begins without exception. The foghorn went off. It was extremely loud. Several people cheered. The woman sat completely still with her pen hovering over a blank page, and then stood up and walked out before the foam finger had even been pointed at anyone. 35. A man accepted a position at a distribution center and showed up on his first morning with his steel-capped boots and his willingness to learn whatever the job required him to do from the very beginning. His supervisor welcomed the new starters and immediately handed each of them a laminated card that listed 11 separate and officially approved techniques for lifting a box from the ground. 11 techniques for lifting a box. His supervisor explained with great seriousness that there would be a short quiz on the material before anyone was permitted to touch any actual boxes. He studied the laminated card for several minutes and then turned it over, looking for a joke on the back. And when he found nothing there, he placed it neatly on the conveyor belt and walked back to his car. 36. A teenager landed a job at a trendy coffee shop and arrived for his very first shift, buzzing with excitement about learning to make drinks and being part of a fast-paced and creative environment that felt genuinely cool for a first job. His manager sat him down and explained the signature customer experience policy that made this particular coffee shop different from every other coffee shop in the entire city. Every single drink that was prepared had to be handed to the customer, along with a short, personalized poem that the barista was expected to improvise on the spot based on what they observed about that specific customer. He made his first drink. He looked at the customer. He looked at the drink. He said nothing. He took off his apron and left the poem unwritten. 37. An older woman accepted a position at a nonprofit organization and arrived on her first morning, genuinely moved by the mission of the charity and excited to finally work somewhere that aligned with her personal values and desire to make a real difference in her community. Her manager welcomed her warmly and directed her toward the all-staff welcome meeting that had been specially arranged to celebrate the arrival of new team members joining the organization. The meeting lasted 6 full hours without a proper break. At hour 4, the entire group was led out of the building and into the parking garage next door, where a ropes course had been assembled between the concrete pillars. She completed one obstacle, looked around at her colleagues dangling from ropes in a parking garage, and quietly took the stairwell home. 38. A young guy accepted his first position at a financial firm and arrived on his first morning in his sharpest suit, feeling like he was about to begin the kind of career that people write about in business books and talk about at dinner parties for years. During his onboarding, his HR representative walked him through the employee dress code policy page by page until they arrived at a clause that stopped him completely in his tracks. The color gray was specifically and explicitly banned from the office at all times. He asked his HR representative why gray was banned. She said she did not know. He asked his manager. His manager said it predated anyone currently working there. He looked down at his gray tie, then at his gray trousers, then walked back out to his car. 39. A woman started her first shift at a big box store and was shown around the building and introduced to her colleagues and given her locker assignment and felt like everything about the job was going reasonably well for a first day. Then she needed to use the bathroom and asked her supervisor where the employee restroom was located. Her supervisor explained that the employee bathroom required a key and that the key was kept inside the manager's office at all times for security purposes. She walked to the manager's office and knocked, and there was no answer. She asked a colleague where the manager was, and her colleague said the manager was almost never actually in the office during the day. She stood in the hallway, holding that information for a moment, and then collected her bag and left. 40. A man accepted a data entry position at a quiet office and arrived on his first morning, genuinely relieved to have found a calm and low-stress environment where he could focus and do his work without the chaos of a loud workplace getting in the way of his productivity. During his orientation, his manager handed him a single laminated sheet titled Office Noise Ordinance and asked him to read it carefully before sitting at his desk. The sheet prohibited humming of any kind at any volume, and it prohibited tapping of any surface with any part of the body, and it specifically listed audible breathing as a violation subject to a formal warning. He read the audible breathing line 3 times, breathed in very quietly, and then breathed out all the way to the parking lot. 41. A guy started his first day at a sales office and was settling into his desk feeling cautiously optimistic about the environment when someone across the floor suddenly closed a deal. Before he could process what was happening, his manager jumped up and announced that the entire floor must stop whatever they were doing immediately. Everyone stood up and performed a fully choreographed group celebration dance that had been professionally designed and rehearsed. He sat frozen watching 30 adults dance in perfect synchronization around him, and he had not even made a single call yet. He picked up his bag and left during the second chorus. 42. A woman started her first shift at a retail store and was quietly stocking shelves in the accessories section, feeling like the job was going perfectly fine for a first day. A loss prevention officer appeared from nowhere and pulled her aside with great urgency and a very serious expression on his face. He informed her that she had been flagged by the in-store surveillance system for looking at the merchandise for too long while she was actively stocking it. She was literally putting the products onto the shelves at the time. She stared at him. He stared back completely seriously. She placed the last item down very carefully and walked out. 43. An older man accepted a position at a government contractor office and arrived on his first morning expecting the kind of structured and organized environment that a serious government-adjacent workplace would naturally provide. During orientation, he learned that every single document produced inside the office required 3 separate levels of signature approval before it could be sent to anyone for any reason. He asked his supervisor whether this policy applied to all documents. His supervisor confirmed it applied to everything, including the weekly memo about the shared coffee machine. He looked at the coffee machine. He looked at the memo. He looked at the 3 signature lines at the bottom and left to find simpler work. 44. A woman showed up to her first day at an advertising agency carrying genuine creative energy and a portfolio she had spent weeks preparing for exactly this kind of opportunity. Her manager welcomed her and then immediately handed her her first official assignment before she had even found her desk. She was required to write 200 words explaining why their client's mediocre yogurt brand genuinely deserves to exist in a crowded market full of better yogurt. She opened her laptop, she stared at the yogurt brief for a long time. She typed 3 words, deleted them, closed the laptop, picked up her portfolio, and left to find a brand that actually deserved her words. 45. A guy accepted a position at a pest control company and arrived on his first morning ready to learn the trade and build a solid career doing practical and necessary work that genuinely helps people. His manager welcomed him and handed him a laminated printed list before he had even seen a single bug. The list contained officially approved nicknames for common household pests that all staff were required to use exclusively when speaking with homeowners in order to avoid causing unnecessary panic during visits. He read through the nicknames slowly and carefully. He flipped the page over. There was a second page of nicknames. He placed both pages on the desk and walked back to his car. 46. A woman accepted a position at a corporate office and arrived on her first morning feeling organized and professional and genuinely ready to contribute meaningfully to whatever team she had just joined. During her first meeting, her manager announced the new creativity initiative that had been recently introduced across the entire department. All meeting notes from every meeting going forward were required to be submitted exclusively in haiku format as a way of encouraging creative thinking among the staff. She waited for someone to laugh. Nobody laughed. Her manager looked at her and nodded encouragingly. She wrote 1 haiku, read it back to herself quietly, stood up, and left the creativity initiative behind forever. 47. A man accepted a position at a chain restaurant and arrived for his first shift feeling confident about his ability to connect with customers and deliver a genuinely warm dining experience from table to table. His manager walked him through the full tableside upsell script that all servers were required to follow word for word without improvising or skipping any section for any reason. When he reached the dessert section, the script required him to describe the chocolate brownie to every single table as a warm hug from the universe. He practiced the line in the mirror of the staff bathroom. It felt like a crime against language. He hung up his apron and left the universe's hug on the counter. 48. A woman walked into a medical billing office on her very first morning, carrying her credentials and her enthusiasm and a genuine willingness to work hard inside what she hoped would be a well-organized and professional environment. Her manager greeted her at the door and walked her directly to her assigned desk without stopping. Sitting on that desk was a computer with an email inbox containing exactly 4,000 unread emails. Her manager explained cheerfully that the team does not believe in inbox zero as a concept or a goal. She pulled out her chair, sat down, opened the inbox, saw the number 4,000 in bold, pushed the chair back in, and left the 4,000 emails completely untouched. 49. For a guy accepted a sales position and arrived on his very first morning sharp and early and ready to prove himself in a competitive environment that he genuinely believed would push him to grow professionally. Within the first hour, his manager pulled him aside privately and leaned in close and whispered that everyone in this building is replaceable, and that this is especially true on day one. Then his manager winked at him and walked away. As if this was a completely normal and motivational thing to say to a brand new employee on their first morning. He stood in the hallway alone, processing the wink for a long moment, then collected his jacket, and replaced himself with someone who would never come back. And honestly, if your job ever made you chant "We are hunters" in a parking lot at 8 in the morning, or handed you a laminated list of approved bug nicknames, then these people were not quitters. They were heroes. If this video made you laugh even once, do yourself a favor and hit that like button, subscribe to BrainFumble, and turn notifications on so you never miss another beautiful disaster. Share this with someone who desperately needs to quit their job. Now tell me in the comments, what is the most unhinged workplace rule you have ever personally survived?